replaced my roommate's face cream with SNAIL GEL. She deserved it. The chipped ceramic mug warmed my hands, the lukewarm coffee doing little to soothe the knot in my stomach. Chloe was humming in the bathroom, a bright, irritating tune that grated on my nerves. It was 7:00 a.m., and already she was prepping for who knew what. Another day, another photo shoot for her increasingly vapid social media empire. I sighed, staring at the half-finished sketch of Mr. Henderson's still life. The scholarship deadline was looming, and I was barely scraping by juggling classes, a pathetic part-time job at the campus coffee shop, and the ever-present pressure of keeping this crumbling apartment somewhat habitable. Chloe emerged from the bathroom, smelling of roses and something synthetic I couldn't quite place. Her face was flawless, airbrushed to perfection even before she'd applied a single filter. "Morning, Maya," she chirped, her voice dripping with a sugary sweetness that never quite reached her eyes. "Sleep well," I grunted in response, turning back to my sketch. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Between the noise of the city and Chloe's late-night phone calls to her equally vapid friends, I was perpetually exhausted. "You're still working on that?" Chloe asked, wrinkling her nose slightly. "Honestly, Maya, don't you think you should focus on something more marketable? Art is such a difficult field to break into." That was Chloe in a nutshell. Always a backhanded compliment, always a subtle dig at my chosen path. My fingers tightened around my pencil, the lead threatening to snap. "I like art," I said, my voice flat. "Of course, darling," Chloe said, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "But you need to be realistic. Maybe you should try graphic design. At least that pays the bills." I bit back a sharp retort. Arguing with Chloe was like wrestling with a cloud, pointless and exhausting. Besides, I had more pressing concerns, like actually finishing the sketch. The day unfolded as predictably as a bad sitcom. I slogged through my classes, fueled by caffeine and the faint hope that Mr. Henderson wouldn't tear my still life to shreds. Sarah, a kind girl from my painting class, slipped me a tube of burnt umber, a lifesaver since I was down to my last, dried-out smear. At the daily grind, the barista, a guy with perpetually bloodshot eyes and a name tag that read Ethan, managed a weary smile as he handed me my usual a triple shot of espresso that tasted vaguely of despair. Back at the apartment, Chloe was on a video call, her voice echoing through the thin walls. "Oh, Mommy, you won't believe the new serum I got. It's imported from Switzerland, darling. Reduces fine lines by, like, 80%. I slammed the door to my room, trying to block out the sound of Chloe's privileged existence. My scholarship application was due tomorrow, and I needed to focus. I needed to win. That night, I actually dreamed about art. Vivid, swirling colors and textures danced behind my eyelids. I woke up feeling inspired, a rare surge of creative energy coursing through me. I added the final touches to my sketch, the charcoal smudging slightly under my eager fingers. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It reflected the grit and beauty of the world as I saw it. I carefully packaged the sketch and my application, feeling a flicker of hope. This scholarship could be my ticket out of this suffocating existence. The next morning, I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, ready to drop it off at the art department on my way to class. "Morning," Chloe said, breezing into the kitchen in a cloud of perfume. She was wearing a silk robe and meticulously applied face mask. "Morning," I mumbled, grabbing my coffee. "Oh, what's this?" Chloe asked, picking up the envelope. "My scholarship application," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Chloe examined the envelope, her expression unreadable. "Good luck," she said finally, placing it back on the counter. I left for class, feeling a little uneasy. Chloe's interest in my application seemed off. The day passed in a blur of lectures and studio time. I kept picturing my sketch, hoping it would resonate with the selection committee. When I got back to the apartment, Chloe was gone. A delivery box sat on the counter, emblazoned with the logo of an organic beauty supply store. I didn't think much of it until I went to grab my application. It was gone. Panic seized me. I searched the entire apartment, tearing through piles of laundry, rummaging through drawers. Nothing. I finally confronted Chloe when she returned, a few hours later, flushed and glowing from what I assumed was another successful photo shoot. "Have you seen my scholarship application?" I asked, my voice shaking. Chloe blinked innocently. "No, darling, why would I? It was right here," I said, pointing to the counter. "And now it's gone." Chloe shrugged. "Maybe you misplaced it." I stared at her, my anger simmering. "Don't play dumb, Chloe, I know you took." Chloe's face hardened. "That's a ridiculous accusation, Maya. Why would I steal your application?" "Because you're jealous," I spat out, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Because you can't stand the thought of me actually achieving something without your mommy's money. Chloe's eyes narrowed. You're being hysterical, she said, her voice icy. Maybe you should calm down and look again. I knew deep down that she had it. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she avoided my gaze, but I had no proof. That night I couldn't sleep. The injustice of it all gnawed at me. Chloe, with all her advantages, had deliberately sabotaged my chances. It was a cruel, petty act, and I couldn't let it go unpunished. That's when the idea struck me. Chloe was obsessed with her skin. She spent hundreds of dollars on creams, serums, and masks, all in the pursuit of eternal youth. She treated her face like a sacred object, meticulously applying layers of products every morning and night. I knew I couldn't physically harm her, but I could mess with her precious skin. The next day, I went to Liam at the pharmacy. Liam was a classmate who worked part-time to pay his tuition. He was also ridiculously cute, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Hey, Liam, I said, trying to sound casual. I need some advice. Liam leaned over the counter, his eyes crinkling at the corners. What's up, Maya? I explained the situation, carefully omitting the part about stealing. I just told him that my roommate was incredibly vain and that I wanted to play a harmless prank on her. I need something that looks like a high-end face cream, I said. But it has to be different. Liam thought for a moment. What about SNAIL GEL? He said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. It's supposed to be really good for your skin, but it's also slimy. SNAIL GEL. It was perfect. I bought a jar of the most potent SNAIL GEL Liam had in stock, carefully noting the similarities in packaging to Chloe's expensive cream. That night, while Chloe was out on a date, I crept into the bathroom. Chloe's vanity was a shrine to consumerism. Jars and bottles lined the shelves, each promising to erase wrinkles, brighten skin, and restore youthful radiance. I found Chloe's favorite cream, a ridiculously expensive concoction that promised to rejuvenate and revitalize the skin. I carefully scooped out the contents, replacing it with a generous dollop of the SNAIL GEL. I smoothed the surface, making it look untouched. I retreated to my room, my heart pounding. It was a childish prank, I knew, but the thought of Chloe slathering snail slime on her face brought a wicked smile to my lips. The next morning, I waited. I heard Chloe humming in the bathroom, the familiar sound grating on my nerves. Then a shriek. What the? I held my breath, trying to stifle a laugh. Chloe stormed out of the bathroom, her face red with fury. Maya, what did you do to my face cream? I feigned innocence. What do you mean? My face is burning, Chloe cried, clutching her cheeks. It's all red and slimy. I tried to maintain a straight face, but a giggle escaped my lips. Slimy, I said, raising an eyebrow. Maybe it's just a new ingredient. This isn't funny, Chloe shrieked. This is my face. My career depends on my face. Chloe spent the next hour frantically trying to soothe her skin, slathering on every cream and lotion she could find. The redness eventually subsided, but the damage was done. Her face was noticeably irritated, and a few tiny bumps had appeared. Chloe was inconsolable. She canceled her photo shoot, blaming it on a sudden allergic reaction. She spent the rest of the day on the phone with her mother, whining about her ruined complexion. I felt a twinge of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of satisfaction. Chloe had finally gotten a taste of her own medicine. The next few days were tense. Chloe avoided me, her eyes filled with suspicion. She spent hours examining her face in the mirror, obsessing over every tiny imperfection. Then, disaster struck. Chloe had a major promotional event scheduled for a new line of organic skincare products. It was supposed to be her big break, the opportunity to finally elevate her social media status. The day of the event arrived, and Chloe was a nervous wreck. She spent hours getting ready, meticulously applying makeup to cover up her lingering skin irritation. I watched her from my room, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety swirling within me. I knew what was coming. As Chloe posed for photos, smiling brightly for the cameras, her face began to react. The SNAIL GEL, combined with the harsh lights and heavy makeup, was wreaking havoc on her skin. Tiny red bumps erupted across her forehead and cheeks. Her skin became increasingly inflamed, her carefully applied makeup cracking and peeling. The photographer, Ethan the poor barista, looked increasingly concerned. He tried to adjust the lighting, but it was no use. Chloe's face was a disaster. Eventually, Chloe had to stop the photo shoot. She rushed to the bathroom, tears streaming down her face. The humiliation was complete. The news spread like wildfire. The photos of Chloe's disastrous skin reaction were plastered all over social media. The comments were brutal. What happened to her face? Looks like she aged 10 years overnight. Maybe she should lay off the filters. Chloe was devastated. Her reputation was in tatters. Her dreams of social media stardom were crumbling before her eyes. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but it was fleeting. She had brought this on herself. In the aftermath of the snail gel incident, things began to change. Chloe became more subdued, less arrogant. She spent less time on social media, more time reading. I even caught her sketching in her room one afternoon. I never confessed to swapping the face cream. Chloe never asked. We simply coexisted, our relationship forever altered. A few weeks later, I received a letter from the art department. I had won the scholarship. I was overjoyed. The scholarship would cover my tuition, allowing me to focus on my art without the constant worry of finances. I saw Liam at the coffee shop a few days later. "Congratulations on the scholarship, Maya," he said, handing me my usual triple espresso. "I knew you could do it." "Thanks, Liam," I said, smiling. "I couldn't have done it without your advice." Liam blushed slightly. "Anytime," he said. We talked for a while about art, about life, about everything and nothing. I realized that I was starting to see him as more than just a classmate. Chloe eventually moved out, trading our cramped apartment for a luxury condo downtown. I didn't miss her. I focused on my art, throwing myself into my studies with renewed passion. I even started selling some of my paintings at local galleries. The snail gel incident remained a strange, slightly embarrassing chapter in my life. It was a childish act of revenge, fueled by anger and frustration. But it also marked a turning point. It was the moment I stopped being a doormat and started standing up for myself. I learned that petty revenge, while satisfying in the short term, ultimately wasn't the answer. The real victory was finding my own path, pursuing my dreams, and surrounding myself with people who supported and encouraged me. And maybe, just maybe, finding a little bit of romance along the way. I saw Chloe a few months later at a fancy art gallery opening. She looked different. Softer somehow, she even smiled at me. "Congratulations on your success, Maya," she said. "You deserve it." I nodded, surprised by her sincerity. "You know," she said, her voice hesitant, I think I understand your art now. It's real." I smiled. Maybe, just maybe, the snail gel had done more than just irritate her skin. Maybe it had changed her too.